Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sprint 201 review. This was a 2-week sprint, but there was the Thanksgiving holiday in the US during it, so we had a few days missing, but we had some good progress this sprint. I'll start with the overview. Jeffrey on the UI, Adam on providers, and Joe on the platform. So like I said, Sprint 201 was a pretty normal sprint. With 94 PRs merged this sprint, and a pretty good mix of bugs and enhancements, lots of test cases, and I'll hand it over to Jeffrey.
Hi. In the sprint, 15 PRs got merged into the classic repo, in which 9 are bugs, 4 are enhancements, and 2 others. I can explain about them in the following slides. In the manage quotas for tenants form, when we enable or turn on the enforce switch, the save button was enabled before. This was reported as an issue, and David made few changes in such as only when the enforce value in its text box is entered and it's valid, only then the save button will work. Next slide. This is a small change from Adam to handle the null checks on the support creates method inside various controllers and helper methods. Next slide. A few of the tabs were displayed conditionally here. For the Podify, the production audit, IA, IM, collect logs will not be displayed. Whereas all the tabs will be displayed for the other environments. Adam had also changed the VMDB loggers content to systemd journal. Next slide. An issue was reported in the dashboard pages. The issue was that when we click on the tabs like overview, details, view tabs, it's not here in the screenshot, but when you click on them, and then we decide to reset the dashboard widgets, the page tries to load a different URL, which was not defined. So this was fixed by mentioning the controller name in the URL inside the dashboard toolbar component. Next slide. Under the application settings diagnostics page, the servers by role contents was displaying all servers assigned to a role, as opposed to only the servers belonging to the selected zone. Therefore, when there are no servers assigned to any role, an undefined error was being displayed. David had fixed this by adding a banner message saying no servers assigned to the roles. Next slide. We were unable to publish a VM in template. We get a message like can't display access records without an ID. This was an issue only from the compute infrastructure VMs page. This is working fine from the providers list view and the VM details pages. It was because this action named publish was not included in the list of allowed actions to get the selected provider IDs. This was the same case for the migrate actions. Next slide. HTML entities were displayed within the strings. So Melody had a fix for this by removing the H we used before the strings because it was already handled in the React component. Next slide. There was an undefined method error in the advanced search of the configured system pages. Melody had fixed this by adding the method name in the config root files. Next slide. David had introduced a delete selected resource button in the diagnostic zone region page. Next slide. David also added a few missing buttons in the MIQ policies show page. Buttons like delete policies, edit condition assignments, edit event assignments, edit actions for policy events. Yeah, next slide. The tree structure in the roles by servers and servers by role tabs were looking a bit squashed with the icons and labels, so added a few styles to make it look better. Next slide. Melody had upgraded the Minimatch version from 3.0.4 to 3.1.2, and Joe changed the PostgreSQL version from 10 to 13 in the ci.yml file. That's all from my side. Thank you, and over to Adam.
Thanks, Jeffrey. For providers this sprint in core, the Cisco Intersight team added physical server profile templates as a new model, as well as support in automation to deploy them as part of an automate script. And so this just makes it easier to provision physical servers based on a pre-selected profile template. In the HMC provider, they now collect fiber channel ports as well as virtual fiber channel client adapters as part of refresh. So those are landing in the guest devices table. They added support for VM reconfiguration, so you can change the CPU, memory, and network for a VM after it's been provisioned. They're now mapping HMC groups as VM labels, so you can see those on the UI. They also added a bug fix to prevent provisioning from an archive template. This is something which is unfortunately for now supports feature doesn't really support inheritance. So this has to be done in all the providers. So they just copied this from one of the other providers for now until we're able to tackle that. And then they also added memory type to VM advanced settings so that you can see if a VM has dedicated or shared memory. Next slide. And over to Joe.
Okay, for core enhancements, for older releases, Brandon added the latest Postgres 10.29.21 RPM and included it in the Yum repository. Brandon also added some scripting to the building of the extra RPM packages we need for appliances and pods. In addition, he also added a purger to prune nightly builds, and it can now run before updating the Yum repository. Adam refactored the frequently used pattern of creating and starting a new job into a new method called signal start. Keenan added a validation preventing deletes on read-only models. I updated the GitHub workflow so our tests run against Postgres 13 on all of the repositories. And Adam updated our Memcache client dependency DALI to 3.2.3 to resolve a security vulnerability and bring us to the current version. Next slide, please. For core bugs, Brandon fixed an issue with Postgres 13 not starting with Rep Manager 13 due to an RPM build not properly using the Yum module Postgres 13 and using 10 instead. Frank and I fixed a few translation issues. Adam added a migration to remove any Vim string objects that were in the MIQ request task options column. And finally, I fixed the aliases tail MIQ and app status on appliances that previously expected log files, but now use journal.ctl. Next slide.
Okay, and that concludes our Sprint 201 review. Our next Sprint 202 review will be on December 14th at the normal place and time. And I'd like to thank all our presenters today, all the members of the community asking questions, trying things out, finding bugs. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.